All right, welcome back to Genius. So we have started arrays. We have started talking about arrays, okay? And we have seen what arrays are. The previous session talked a lot about few things, the basic things we need to know about arrays, the basic methods and stuff like that. So, but in this session, let's talk about how do we loop through arrays. Remember, arrays are a collection of items, elements. Okay, so if you want to have access to those elements, how do you do it? So what you do is that you loop through them. So when you loop through them, you'll be able to have those elements and then do whatever you want to do with them. And when I say do whatever you want to do with them, it also depends on the method you're using to loop through. Okay, so how are you going to loop through them? So without wasting time, let us take a look at how to loop through arrays. So looping through arrays in JavaScript can be done in several ways, depending on what you need to achieve. Depending on what you need to achieve, there are different methods you can use. So in this session, we'll be looking at few methods. Okay. Then in the next session, we'll also look at other methods that we can use to achieve the same thing. But like I said, it depends on what you want to do with the element that you're looping through. Okay. So the first one we take a look at is the for loop. We all know what for loop is. We have done for loop and we see what for loop is. And we also, even when we are talking about for loop, we also mentioned for loop, looping through arrays. So now the traditional for loop gives you full control over the loop index. So whenever you want to loop through an array and you want to make use of their index, the index of the elements, then the for loop is a very good one for you. Okay, so you can see the scenarios where you should be using each of these methods. So if you want to use the traditional for loop, if you want to make use of the index, if there's a way you want to make use of the index, then you can go with the traditional for loop. All right, so look at this. We have an array here, 10, 20, 30, 40. This could be prices of product. This could be scores of students. This could be ages of our friends or our students. Okay. Then we see we are looping through. This is the normal for loop, the traditional for loop, okay? The only difference there is that instead of saying I less than 10 or I less than 20 that we used to do in our examples, we are now saying I less than the length of the for loop, okay? But moreover, this length would also give us a number, okay? So this is just the normal for loop. Let I equal to 0, I less than um, the the length, which could be 10, which could be 5, which could be 3. All right. So before I even go on, let me just recap on this for loop thing. Okay, so I go on and I say, I think I should just leave all these things here. I should leave all these things here. So what I'll do now is, let me just do the traditional for loop. I'll say, for let I equal to 0, I less than, let's say 5, then I plus plus. Okay, so this is traditional for loop. So when I do this, I'll console.log I. All right, I'll console.log I. So if I run this code now, we are going to get 0 through 5. True false, sorry, because we say less than 5. So it's going to, the condition, remember the for loop that we did. Once this condition is false, all right, the loop ends. Okay. So now we could also say, if we want to loop through this array and we want to make use of the index, we could just, instead of this 5, we could just say, because we don't know the number, we don't really know when to stop. Here we know when to stop. Okay, we know how many occurrences, how many times we want to loop through. But if in case we don't know the length of the array, it's possible that we are not the creators of this array and we are using them, so we don't know the length of this array. We could just say friends dot length. Do you understand? So this is going to be I less than friends dot length. So if the length is 5, so remember now, since this thing starts from 0, the index of array starts from 0, the length is always the one greater than the last index. So we want to get to the last index. So we'll say I less than okay, less than the friends dot length. So when we run this, we are going to get 0 through 4 because the last index here is 4. Okay, so then if you want to have access to this, so remember that if you want to access elements of an array, what do? You just use the index position. So this I we are having here now is giving us the index position. The I here, let I equal to 0, I less than this. You can see whatever we are printing here is the index of the index of the elements in this array. So if we want to access this array, we can now say friends of I, because this I, at every given time of this iteration, it will give us 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this gives us the index. So this is how you actually work with this. So when I run this now, it's going to print out all the names of our friends. But remember, when we were talking about loops and we talked about performance, we said that we should not be doing this because this thing would for every iteration of this loop, this thing will be re-evaluated. All right, which is bad for performance. So what you can do is you can bring it outside here and say const length equal to sorry, equal to friends dot length. So we now have a constant test. So instead of using this thing and evaluating it every time, we just use the length that we have here. So this is for performance, and it also give you the same result. So in case you don't understand anything that I just mentioned here, please reach out to us. Okay, reach out to us so that we can explain better for you. So if I run this code now, we are still going to get the same thing. So this is how you use the traditional for loop. This is how you use the traditional for loop. Okay, you have access to the index. All right, you have access to the index, and you can now access the arrays based using the index position. Okay, and most especially, please don't use the friends.length inside of here, because if you do it here, for every iteration, this will be evaluated. And if you imagine you're running this thing for 1,000 times, that means that thing will be evaluated 1,000 times. That means you're giving the computer extra job. But when you do it here and just get the length, it is just going to be evaluated just once. All right. So this is just the traditional way, the traditional for loop. So if you want to have access to the index, now I can even say, look at it. I can do something more. I can say, okay, let me use, sorry, let me do this. Okay, I can say, position. All right, I can say position. I can say I plus 1. Then I put a comma here and I say, I can say name. Okay. Do whatever you want to do with it. I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to play around with this. So in case you also want to have access to the index, you can do whatever you want to do. So right now I'm doing more to what we did before, and I'm going to get position is 1, and so this is their position in my string, in my list. Okay. So like what I would want to say, this is just how it is. So you can do more with this thing because you have the index. The index is, we have it in this our I variable, and you can make use of them the way you want to. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next thing we have. Now you can also use the for loop, the while loop, sorry, to loop through your arrays. All right. So a while loop runs as long as the condition is true. So we could actually have our um, array here, and then we have our initialization. Sorry, we have our initialization, because of course, you know, the difference between while loop and for loop is that the initialization, okay, the initialization and the increment could actually be outside of the loop. Okay, so now we say while loop, while I is less than array.length, do the same thing. So it's basically using the while loop, and then let me just show you. So instead of using this for loop, all right, I could just use the while loop. I could just say while, okay, I could also have my while I, or I could just say index. All right, give it a better name. I could just say index instead of saying using I could just say index, and the index is starting from 0. So I could say y index is less than the length. What do I want to do? I want to console.log. I want to console.log friends of index. All right. I want to console.log friends of index, but after that, I'll have to do my increment. I will now do index plus plus. Okay. This is the while loop. So when I run this, I still get the same thing. All right. So, but I'm using another type. Oops, sorry, I have an error. So what's the error? Oh, sorry. Instead of, it says, look at the error here. I think I should start introducing you to how to handle errors, okay? Because this is something you must always see. It says assignment to constant variable. You see, this index is a constant. You remember constant, they don't change. Their values do not change. So, and here I'm trying to change the value of this constant here. So if you have, and I told you in that when we were talking about creating variables, I told you to always use constant. And as you're using the constant, if there's any need for you to now change the value, then you can now change it to let. You can now use the let keyword. Since at a point in my code, I was going to change it, so I will now use let. So instead of using constant to create the variable, remember constant variables will not change. But if you create variables with length, yes, you can change them in your code. So if I run this now, we'll not get the error again. Okay, so this has been printed out. So here I'm using the while loop. I don't know if I am fast, but I'm fast because we have already talked about while loop and it's just using the same thing. So this is not hard to grab. All right. So, but in case you don't understand something, please reach out to us. Reach out to us. We're always available. All right, the next one is using the for each loop. So this is where big boys, this is what big boys use, okay? This is what big boys use to loop through arrays, all right? We also have the map method, but we'll be talking that in a separate session so that we can explain better. So the for each, all right? The for each method executes a function for each array element. You can see here the for loop and the while loop. We were just having access to the index and doing whatever we want to do with the index. But when you using the for each loop, okay, the for each loop will take a function and that function will be run for every element in the array. So the function you provide to the for each method runs for every element. It will run for 10, it will run for 20, it will run for 30, it will run for 40. But this time around, you're not going to have access to the okay, I think you would also have access to the index. I think so. Yes, you have access to the index too. Yeah, because this for each loop expects a function. Here they are using an arrow function. Okay, it expects a function, and this function will take the first argument is the value, which is 10 in this case. So if this function runs for this array, now it will run first for 10, then run 20, 30, 40. So when it's running for 10, the value will be 10 and the index will be 0. When it's running for 20, the value will be 20 and the index will be 10. It will be 1. Sorry about that. So now before we go, let's just see some examples. So instead of using the while loop here, all right, I'm not going to do any of this again. I'm going to use the for each loop. So I will say friends dot for each. This is a built-in method into the array. Okay, so this is actually better. So when I do this, you can see it's expecting something we call a callback function. Yes, we talked about functions, and I believe we talked about arrow functions. In case we didn't talk about it, just reach out to me so that I can explain to you what an arrow function is. But I believe we talked about arrow function. Okay, so in case we didn't, just reach out to me. So an arrow function goes like this. This is an arrow function. All right. All right. If I don't want to use an arrow function, I could use a no-name function. I have forgotten what we even called it. A function that does not have any name. So I could just say, I could just do this. This is also valid. I could do this. All right. This is very, very valid. So in case you do not understand what an arrow function is, you can use this normal function, or you can actually create a function here. I can call this function iterator. I can call it iterator and sorry, and I'm used to writing arrow function. That is why I wanted to make that mistake. So this function would have value, and index. Okay, so I can now pass in this other function I created here. I can pass in iterator here. Okay, and I would this the for each function, the for each function would method will give us, we will have access to that value and the index automatically. All right. So now you see I have a function here, and what does this function do? I can just go on and print dot log. I can just print I could just do value. All right. I could just do value, and I say the value is this. All right. Then I will say index. Okay, it's just up to you. Do whatever you want to do with this. It's up to you. You have access to the value and the index. So do whatever you want to do with them. So this is what I'm doing. This is, I created a function separately. Now, the for each function, this for each now expects a callback function. It could be, it expects a function. Look at it as I look at the documentation. It says performs the specified action for each element. So whatever action you specified in this function, that is what it's going to take. Okay, so you can see this function itself, it takes in a value, index, and the array itself. So let's go back. If I want to have access to the array, I could also do that. I could just say, this will give us the array. So in case after doing this, I want to do something with the array, I could also do it. So I could just say console.log array. So let's go back to what this function does. So callback, it takes the function you're going to give to this particular for each method should have a value, index. It should have all these parameters as cool. So value, index, array, and it's going to return. It is going to return. It returns nothing. It returns void. It returns nothing. Okay. And after this function, there's also another argument, this.org. Okay. Okay, this.org. This org. Okay, so it returns the okay. So, but first of all, let me not confuse you with what I want to do. But look at it. We have access to, we have a function, and we'll pass in the array here. All right. So when we run this code now, look at what is going to be printed out. Oops, we have an error. Value is not defined. Okay. Where exactly did this thing happen? 26, 12, sorry. All right, sorry, I don't need to. Oops. Okay, wait, I think my syntax is wrong. Value and index. So why am I getting the error? All right, I think my syntax is not correct. Okay, so but first of all, let me just use the arrow function and see where I'm having issue. So if I do this, all right, so I could just, so when I run this now, the callback function is going to run. So let me see where, okay, see, we got it. There was no problem here. Okay, I think it's from me here. This iterator, okay. All right. So I think the best way to do here is just to use a callback function. So I don't really know why. Yeah, this could be problem of the this keyword and all those things, but I don't want us to go to that, okay? I could actually debug this thing to see where the errors are coming from, but you can see because I used an arrow function, all right, this is working. All right. So I could also, this also gives you the array itself. It gives you the array itself. So I could also do this here. When I run this, okay. So for each, you can see this thing is running for each and every, each of them. All right, so let me take this one out. But at least you know that this would, you will have access to the array. But you can see that for this function is running for every particular item that we have. It's running for Patrick, it's running for James, it's running for Ifan, it's running for Occam, it's running for Austin. And these are their different indices. Okay, so with the for each loop, all you have to do is to pass in a function, an arrow function, and then you will have access to the value, the index, and the array. But remember that the function that you pass in will run for every value that you have in that array. All right. So this is it. It will run for the function you pass in there will run for every value that you have in every element you have in the array, and you should your function will have access to the value, the index, and the array. So do whatever you want to do with these values is up to you. All right. So we have another one, the for of. This is best for simplicity. All right. It's a simple way to iterate over arrays of elements directly. So look at the syntax here. Instead of, I have the array here, all right? So instead of using the for each loop, I can just say for, if I just want to have access to the value. So if you don't care about the index, you don't care about the array itself, you just want to have access to the value. That is when you use this for of. All right, like there are different scenarios where you use this, and they are best in whatever scenario they should be used. So if I'm working on a project and I want to just have access to the values, I don't want the index, I don't care about the indices, I don't care, I just want access to the values. So there's no need going up and doing all these big things. I could just say for, instead I use the let keyword, I could call it element of, so this is the syntax of the array that you want to loop through. Then here you can have access to this value. So console.log, I will have access to that element. So this is going to loop through all the elements and give them to me here in this element. So if I run this now, I'm going to have access to all the elements. So this is the syntax. This is how you write it. We also have, I think we have in. Yes, I don't know if this is in JavaScript, but this, when I use in, is going, instead of this element giving me the value, when I use in, it's going to give me the index. I hope there will be no error. Okay, you can see. So we have the for of, we have the for in. Okay, when you're using the for in, you're going to have access to the index only. If you want to have access to the index only, you use the for in, not the for of. So let index in friends. So when I run this, you're going to give us the index. So when you're using the for in, all right, you're going to have access to the index. But when you use the for of, all right, you're going to have access to the element itself. Okay, so like I said, it depends on what you want to do with it and how you want to do with whatever you have. Oh, sorry. So here I'm having access to the element itself, not the index. So if I want to have access to the element, I'll use the for of. So the for of, this is the syntax. But for the for in, when you use, instead of here, you put in, you'll be having access to the index, not the element itself. Okay. So I believe that sinks in. So before we wrap up, let us do some exercises, simple exercises. So the first exercise we are going to do is that we are going to use a loop to calculate the sum of all numbers in an array. There is a better way, a more advanced way to do this, to solve this problem, but since we have not talked about that, it's called the reduce method. You can use it to do aggregation, but we'll come to that later on. But since we don't have that, let us just do the simple way. So we are going to use the best method to calculate this. They said use a loop to calculate the sum of all numbers in an array. So when you analyze this thing, what do we do? What do we need? I don't think we need the index here. We don't need the index. So we just need to have access to the element, which is the value, the elements. Okay, so that is what we can now use to calculate the sum. So the best looping method we are going to use now should be the for of. So now, okay, let's assume we have these ages here. Okay, we have these ages, and I will change this element to age. So these are the different ages of these are the different ages of our students. So when I run this, we are going to get all the ages. But what we were asked is we were asked to calculate the sum. So what we could do here is this: since we are able to have access to all the elements, the ages of our students, we could come here and say um let sum equal to 0. All right. So for each loop, what are we going to do? We are going to do sum plus equal to the age. Do you understand? And at the end of the day, we are going to print our sum. So for each iteration of this loop, we will just going to add whatever we got, the value, the element of that array, we'll just add it to the sum because the sum starts from 0. So we could add it. So when we do this, all right, when we run this now, we are going to get the sum. The sum is 270. So if you're able to calculate this, you can see 34 plus 12 or whatever, you give us 270. But let us do something that is simple for us to get. Let's do something that is easy for us to test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this, oops, sorry, it's not dot, it's comma. All right. Okay. All right. So we have 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15. So we are expecting to get 15 here. So when we run this, we are going to get 15. So this is look at the way we were able to do this exercise. We were asked to get the sum of all the elements in an array. So we have such array like this. So what you do is, first of all, you declare a variable that will hold the sum. Then you will now look through all the arrays. Now you make a choice on the method you're going to use. Here, because we are just interested in getting the value, like the element itself, we are using the for of. There's no using the for each loop. I think it will be too much. Okay, we are using the for of. And here, for every loop, we are able to get the element, which is the age. And then for every loop, we are adding this age to what we already have in the sum, and we are able to get the sum. Okay, so this is how to do it simply. In case you get confused, like I said, always reach out to us. So the next exercise is this: to say find the largest number in an array using a loop. There's also another method of using this. Now, before I go in, let me tell you something. I don't know, some of you know this story already. There was a time I lost a job in a job interview. The reason why I lost that interview is because of data structures. All right. They gave me an exercise to do, and I was not using data structures to do those exercises, and it made me to waste a lot of time, and the time elapsed, so I couldn't finish the program they gave me. But when you understand data structures and algorithm, there are built-in methods for all these things. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. All right. So that is why in our advanced JavaScript, we are teaching you data structures and algorithm. And when we started this search chapter, we told you that array is one of the data structures. So we also have some, now you can see this method. Now find the largest number in an array. I told you the more skills you have, the more things you know as a programmer, the better for you, the easier for you to solve problems. For the sake of loop, I'm going to use loop to find the largest number in an array. But if I want to do something better, there is this math, okay? There is this math object that has this maximum. So this maximum method takes in an array. So I could just give it these ages, and what it's going to do for me is going to give me the largest number. You can see I don't need to use loop here. I don't need to use loop. Just here and just this line of code, I can get the largest number, which is 5. Oops, sorry. Okay, sorry. What's our issue here? Ages, this returns a number. So why is it giving me uh okay, returns the larger of a set of supplied numeric okay, it says not a number. Okay. Um Anyways, this is something I will just have to debug. Okay, because, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. I should use the spread operator. Yes, sorry about that. I should use the spread operator. So when I run this, it's going to give me 5. Okay, that's the largest number. You see, I just brought this thing in to let you know that you need to learn more skills, and the more things you know, the better for you. I told you how I lost the job interview because I was not using data structures, and when you know all these data structures, you know a whole lot. You can see how I was able to get the largest number of an array with this simple line. But if you don't know this thing now and you know about arrays, you can just use the loop method, the looping methods to go through it, but it will take you a longer time. So what am I saying? I'm saying learn more. All right. The more skills you have, the better the easier life as a programmer becomes for you. With just one line of code, I'm able to do this thing. I'm going to this just one line of code. But if I do not know this thing now, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say the mass number is this, okay? The mass number is going to be 0, all right? And then let age of ages equal to this. So what am I going to do here? I'm not going to say, I will say if, sorry, I will say if mass is less than age, all right? I would now say mass equal to age. You can see the troubles I'm having. Yeah, you can see lines of code that I'm writing. But let me give you the logic here. Remember, we want to look for the maximum number, all right? So we'll start with the maximum number to be 0. Now, we are looping through, we want to know the maximum age that we have here. So as we are looping through, we are able to get the age with the for of loop. Then we are not saying if what we have, the value we have as the maximum, right now, the first iteration, the maximum will be 0. So if maximum is less than the age, that means that particular age that we are looping through, all right, is greater than the maximum. So it should be the maximum. Yes, 0 is less than 5, is less than 1. So yes, 1 should not be the maximum. So that is how we go through it. Then if it is, so as we go on, we can actually, I can just, okay, I do something random so that we have 10 to 13, this could even be 40, and this could be 15, all right? So um, after doing this, let us run our maximum. So the max here would be, we're expecting it to be 40. So let's run and see if we get the correct answer. You can see we got 40. So, but let me walk you through this logic. All right, let me walk you through this logic. So I'm going to debug. I'm going to debug from here once we get here. And let me show you the values we're able to get and walk you through this logic in case you don't understand it. So I'm going to start debugging. Now look at it. Here, I will step over, all right? Our age, we are inside the first iteration now. The first value here is 10. So now we are going to calculate. Right now, the mass value is still 0. Remember, the mass is 0, all right? So we are saying if mass is less than age, that means the value of mass is what? 0. All right. So is 0 less than 10? Yes. So since 0 is less than 10, the higher for so far, the maximum number should be 10. So we go on. This will evaluate to true. So now the maximum number, we are not saying since the maximum number is less than 10, then 10 should not be the maximum number. So we will now assign 10 into this maximum number. All right. So that is the first iteration. All right. Um, that is the first iteration. Okay, the maximum number is now 10. So we go again. Here we have age to be, wait, let me expand this thing so that we can see. Here we have age to be 2. All right, but our maximum number is 10 now. It's no longer 0, it's now 10. So is maximum the number less than 2, the answer will be what? False. It will evaluate to false because 10 is not less than 2. So you can see it now, it didn't come in here again to assign this because this is not, the maximum number is less than age. So it is not true. So it will not come into this block of code. So we go to the next iteration. The next iteration now, age is what? Age is 13. So our maximum number is still 10. So we are checking if is 10 less than age. Yes, 10 is less than 13. That is true. So it will come into this block of code, then assign 13 to max number. So at this point, our maximum number is now 13. All right. So we go in again because we are still iterating through the loop. Age is this time around, age is 40, maximum number is 13. So we will now say, is max less than age? Yes, 13 is less than 40. So it will go in here, assign a maximum number to be equal to 40. Now age is 40, so max equal to age. To assign it to 40, and we go again, max is now 40. We come again, is 40 less than age? No, 40 is not. The next, well, here we have age to be 15. Is 40 less than 15? No, 40 is greater than 15. So it will evaluate to false, and then the loop, we will be out of the loop. And then we print the maximum number, and it's 40. You can see you can see the whole trouble we went through. But if you know about this math object and know about this maximum method of this math object, with just one line of code, we don't need to write all this big code that we are writing here. That is why I'm saying learn. Don't ever cease to learn. Keep on learning. After taking this course, go for the JavaScript mastery. Okay, you're going to learn more in that JavaScript mastery. Okay, all right. So it will save you a whole lot of embarrassment, and you're going to be better than others out there. So this is it. We have been able to do the first, the second exercise, which is finding the largest number in an array using a loop. So the next one we are going to use, the next exercise is count how many numbers in an array are even numbers and how many are odd numbers. This is tricky, but let's go. We are programmers, so let's go and let's dive into this exercise. Now we are looking for, we are counting the number of even numbers and the number of odd numbers. So first of all, we'll have to declare two variables before we even start the loop. The first one will be even number count. The second number will be odd number count. So as we now go through looping through the array, we'll be checking if that particular element is an even number. If it's an even number, then we would increment the count of even number. If it's not an even number, of course it will be an odd number, then we would increment the count of odd number. So let's go to code and write this. You can see this is fun. Okay, I believe you guys are enjoying this. So instead of mass here, I'm going to say even count. So this is the count number of even numbers, and this will be number of odd numbers. Okay. All right. So everything is starting from 0. Now, as we are looping through, all right, this age, we want to check. You can use any array you want to, all right, but I'm just going to stick with this one we already have, okay, because we have even numbers and odd numbers in here. So what I'm going to do is this. I will say, is age an even number? And how do we do that? We say age modulus 2. Age divided by 2, is it equal to 0? So if this is equal to 0, that means it's an even number. All right. So if this is an even number, what do we do? If it's an even number, what do? We say even count. Sorry. We say even count plus plus. All right. Else, that means it is an odd number. If that one is not true, then it's an odd number. So we say odd count plus plus. So what are we doing here? First of all, we created two variables to keep track of the counts of our even numbers and odd numbers. So as we are going through, looping through the array, we now check, is this person's age, if you divide this person's age by 2, is it going to be equal to 0? Remember that the modulus will give you, the modulus operator will give you the remainder of a division. So age divided by 2, because an even number is any number that is divided by 2 without any remainder. Okay, so age modulus 2, if it is equal to 0, that means we have an even number. So once that is true, we will now go on and increment our even number count. But if it is not true, we go on and increment our odd number count. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to say, I will say even numbers, even count is this. Even count is, I'll put a colon there on the space. I'll say even count. Then I'll go with a comma and say odd count. Sorry, odd count. Um, so with this, we are going to run this code and print out the, now let us take a look at our code. We have 10 to 14 as even numbers, and we have 13 and 15 as odd numbers. So from what we have here, our even numbers will be 3, our odd numbers will be 15. So let's see if we get it correctly. All right, guys, you can see we have even count to be 3 and we have odd count to be 2. Let me still walk you through debugging before we close this. So let me just show you our logic here. So we are, oops, sorry. We are debugging here. Okay, so now we are here checking, we are looping through this, and when we step over, all right, our age is what? 10. So we are going to check, is age modulus 2 equal to 0? And since it is true, yes, age modulus 2 is equal to 0, so it's an even number. We come here and we increment. Let me show you the local variables we have here. You can see we have even count and we should have odd count. All right. So since 10 is 10 is an even number, we come here and we increment the even count. So when I step over, you will see that even count is now 1. Odd count remains 0. All right. Let me expand this thing. Oops. Okay. I want to expand this. Okay, I think that's the much I can go. Okay, but you can see we have even count to be 1 and odd count to be 2. So we go again. Is 2 an even number? Yes, 2 is an even number because the age here is 2. So it's an even number. So the even count gets incremented by 1, so it becomes 2. The next one is 13. Is 13 an even number? No. Since it's not an even number, the odd count goes and incremented by 1. So you can see right now we have even count to be 2, odd count to be 1. So going through like this, you can see now we are in 40. 40 is an even number, so even count to be incremented. And we go again. 15 is not an even number. Then 15, the odd count to be incremented. So ladies and gentlemen, this is how you loop through arrays. And in case you get confused, you do not understand certain things that we explained here, please reach out to us. Ask your questions and we'll be happy to give you answer and clear your confusion, okay? So, but this is where we draw the curtain for today. And I will see you in the next section where we'll be talking more about different methods, okay?